The 2026 Grammys were never just another awards show, and what viewers saw on television barely scratched the surface of what actually unfolded that night. This was not simply a celebration of music, it was a pressure cooker of history, emotion, controversy, silent power shifts, and moments that will quietly reshape the industry for years to come. From the outside, it looked polished and glamorous, perfectly timed camera cuts and carefully selected reactions. On the inside, it was raw, tense, emotionally charged, and at times almost uncomfortable in its honesty. The kind of night people in the industry would talk about in hushed tones long after the lights went down. By the morning of February 1st, Los Angeles already felt charged. There was a heaviness in the air that went beyond the usual awards season buzz. Around the Crypto.com arena, security checkpoints multiplied. Streets were blocked earlier than normal, and the presence of law enforcement and private security was impossible to ignore. Publicists moved with sharper focus, controlling access and conversations more tightly than ever. Artists arrived quieter, more inward, less performative. This wasn't coincidence. The music industry walked into the 2026 Grammys fully aware it was standing at a crossroads. Behind the scenes, conversations had already been simmering for months. Streaming numbers were being questioned in private boardrooms. Artificial intelligence in music was no longer a futuristic idea, but an active threat and tool, blurring the line between human creativity and machine replication. Long-standing frustrations about representation, language, genre bias, and artistic ownership were no longer whispers. They were boiling just beneath the surface. Many artists felt this night would either signal real progress or confirm that the industry was still stuck in its old patterns. Inside the arena, even before the cameras rolled, something felt different. The usual invisible borders were blurred. Pop stars were mingling with rappers in ways that felt organic rather than strategic. Legacy rock artists leaned in to talk with viral newcomers who, just a few years ago, wouldn't have been allowed near their tables. There was less hierarchy, or at least the illusion of it. Executives watched closely from their seats, aware that the night ahead could redefine narratives they had carefully controlled for decades. This wasn't just about who would win, it was about what those wins would symbolize. Bad Bunny's presence alone carried a sense of inevitability. Long before his name was announced, whispers traveled through backstage corridors that something historic was coming. Crew members spoke quietly about it. Artists exchanged looks whenever his category was mentioned. What cameras didn't capture was how deeply emotional he already was hours before the show began. While others posed for photos, laughed loudly, and played to the room, he stayed close to his team, grounding himself. He avoided unnecessary conversations, choosing stillness over spectacle. At one point, he stepped away entirely, FaceTiming family members back in Puerto Rico. People nearby noticed how long the call lasted, how he nodded silently, absorbing words only he could hear. Those close to him noticed his hands shaking as Album of the Year approached. This wasn't stage fright, this was the weight of expectation, the understanding that this moment could represent far more than personal success. When his win was announced, the broadcast showed applause, but it didn't capture the magnitude of what happened inside the room. The standing ovation didn't stop when the camera cut away. It continued, swelling, echoing through the arena. Artists hugged strangers. Some cried openly, hands covering their faces. Others stood frozen, visibly processing what they had just witnessed. A predominantly Spanish-language album had just won the biggest prize in music. A barrier that had stood for generations collapsed in seconds. His acceptance speech was edited down for time, but in the room it was longer and far more personal. He spoke about being told early in his career that success meant compromise, changing his sound, his language, his identity to be more accessible. He talked about immigrants, about being underestimated, about the quiet pressure to erase parts of yourself in order to be accepted. He chose authenticity, even when it meant slower recognition. When his voice cracked, the room fell completely silent. This wasn't a victory speech, it was a release years in the making. Backstage afterwards, emotions overflowed. Younger Latin artists lined up to hug him, some unable to form full sentences through tears. Several told him they finally felt seen, that they no longer felt invisible or boxed in. Executives watched quietly from a distance, fully aware this moment marked a shift they could no longer manage or delay. This wasn't a trend, it wasn't a phase, it was a turning point. At the same time, another legacy was quietly cementing itself. Kendrick Lamar didn't command attention with spectacle or noise, but his presence was unmistakable, calm, focused, heavy with meaning. Throughout the night, he spoke little, conserving energy, staying inward. Those around him noticed his stillness, how he seemed untouched by the chaos swirling around him. When he and SZA won Record of the Year, their hug was brief on camera, but far longer in reality. It wasn't celebratory in the traditional sense. It was respectful, grounded, deeply earned. There was no jumping, no shouting, just acknowledgement of the work and the journey. After leaving the stage, Kendrick told people nearby that awards only matter if they move the culture forward. His words lingered. Online, debates ignited instantly. Some praised the win as long overdue, others questioned it, as they always do. But inside the arena, there was no argument. The respect was unanimous. Then came one of the most emotionally overwhelming moments of the night, the tribute to Ozzy Osbourne. What aired on television was powerful, but it didn't fully capture the atmosphere inside the arena. As the performance began, seasoned rock musicians stood instinctively, without prompting, hands pressed together, eyes fixed on the stage. It wasn't rehearsed, it was reflex. Sharon Osbourne sat frozen, visibly trembling, gripping the hand of someone beside her. Her expression shifted between pride, grief, and disbelief. When the final note rang out, the silence that followed wasn't planned. No one moved, no one clapped. It was grief, respect, and love colliding in real time. When applause finally erupted, it was raw and thunderous, almost desperate in its intensity. Backstage, artists from completely different genres wiped away tears. Some admitted they hadn't expected to feel so shaken. Others said it felt like saying goodbye not just to a person, but to an era. Not all unforgettable moments were emotional. Some were chaotic, unexpected, and pure live television. One of the night's most talked about incidents came from Cher's unpredictable presentation. On screen, it looked like harmless confusion, almost comedic. Behind the scenes, it was controlled panic. Producers scrambled, stage managers signaled frantically. There was real concern the show would derail its tightly packed schedule.
Cher, however, was completely unfazed. Backstage, she laughed openly, brushing it off, saying live television should feel alive, not robotic. Her refusal to be rattled turned a potential disaster into one of the most human moments of the night. It reminded everyone that unpredictability is part of the magic. Fashion sparked its own internal battles. Chappelle Roan's red carpet look sent shockwaves before she even entered the building. Behind closed doors, reactions were sharply divided. Some executives openly complained, calling it distracting, unnecessary, or inappropriate. Younger artists and creatives rallied behind her, praising her courage and refusal to conform. Chappelle herself remained calm throughout the night, repeating to anyone who asked that art without risk is just packaging. Addison Rae's after-party appearance dominated headlines, but few saw the deeper shift happening beneath the surface. Backstage, she spoke seriously with producers and songwriters, not about branding or virality, but about melodies, lyrics, and long-term direction. Several industry veterans quietly noted that her energy felt different, more focused, more intentional, less influencer, more artist. One of the most talked about presences of the night didn't even involve the main ceremony. Taylor Swift skipping the show but appearing at private after-parties sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The moment she walked in, phones came out. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. She didn't give speeches. She didn't seek attention. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to shift the room. Justin Bieber's return performance carried far more weight than the broadcast could show. When cameras cut away, he stood alone for a moment, eyes glossy, breathing deeply, grounding himself. People nearby described it as watching someone close a painful chapter and open a new one at the same time. Backstage, he hugged crew members repeatedly, thanking them quietly, sincerely. Lady Gaga's night was a study under pressure like no other. Her ambitious performance nearly fell apart hours before showtime due to technical complications. Engineers scrambled, rehearsals were paused. Last-minute fixes pushed her team to the edge. When it finally came together, the relief backstage was overwhelming. Her acceptance speech, partially cut for time, continued off-camera, where she spoke passionately about mental health, creative ownership, and survival in an industry that constantly demands reinvention. Absences also told stories. Several major artists chose not to attend, some due to personal loss, others as a quiet protest. Their empty seats didn't go unnoticed. Conversations sparked about whether the Grammys were evolving fast enough or simply reacting when pressure became unavoidable. Political tensions simmered throughout the night. Backstage discussions touched on immigration, censorship, and artificial intelligence reshaping music creation. Some artists embraced the platform for expression, believing silence was no longer an option. Others worried the show was becoming a battleground instead of a celebration. Social media amplified every opinion, every clip, every quote, but inside the arena, those conversations felt heavy and unavoidable. As the final award was handed out and the broadcast ended, the real night began. After parties across Los Angeles became extensions of the ceremony. Wins were celebrated loudly, losses were processed quietly. New collaborations were whispered into existence under dim lights and thumping bass. Deals were discussed without contracts. Friendships formed. Old rivalries softened, if only for a moment. The 2026 Grammys weren't clean. They weren't comfortable. They weren't perfect, but they were honest. They marked a moment when the industry looked at itself, stripped of polish and excuses, and realized that change was no longer optional. What aired on television was edited, timed, and polished. What actually happened was emotional, messy, historic, and impossible to forget. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more celebrity updates just like this.